Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Connecting Learners and DigiSkills Cymru lunchtime New Year, New You webinar, Value My Skills. We're going to be starting in about 5 minutes. Karen and I are both online currently. If you're joining us right now, if you can possibly go to the link that I'm going to put in the video, below the video, in the comment section now, and fill in the form. That would really help us in terms of our numbers. But if you're not able to do that right now, don't worry about it. Get yourself a coffee, grab a sandwich, and we'll be starting in 5 minutes' time. Currently, we've only got one person viewing us. Might well actually be me, if there is anyone there. Yeah, just to reiterate, we've got a form for you to fill in, which just helps us with our numbers and our reporting, and that is the link to it is in the chat pane on the side of the video on YouTube. We'll also be showing it in the presentation, and there should have been an email come through to you as well. So we'll be starting in 3 or 4 minutes time. We've got a few people logged on. So until then, we'll leave you with the home screen from Karen. We've still only got one viewer, which I think is actually me. But hopefully people will be logging on right now. The Twitter hashtag, if anyone's using Twitter, is hashtag New Year, New UNISON, and that's how you can join in the conversation both during the webinar and afterwards. And on there we'll be sharing some links, and I'll be fielding questions and passing on the comments on to Karen at intervals throughout the webinar. We're at 29 minutes past 12 now. We'll be starting in a few minutes time. We've got someone else who's just logged on, so welcome to you, wherever you are out there. Hopefully as we reach past, there'll be more people joining us. We'll start when we get up to around 6 people. At the minute, we've got a couple of people plus me watching. So settle in, grab yourself a drink and get your sandwiches out, and Karen will be starting delivering the workshop in a few minutes' time. For people just logging on now, this is the New Year, New You lunchtime webinar, Value Your Skills. Karen Fisher will be starting the presentation in a few minutes' time. We're just waiting for people who have registered on the webinar to click the link and to join us. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat pane on the side of the YouTube video or on Twitter using the hashtag New Year, New Unison. I'll be monitoring both the chat pane and Twitter throughout the presentation. So please, if you want to introduce yourself, feel free to do that. I think on YouTube you have to be logged in using your Gmail or Google account to comment. But if you can't do that, it's no problem. Just log on to Twitter and use the hashtag. You can find us at DigiSkills Cymru, and the hashtag is New Year, New Unison. So we've got 4 viewers, which means 3 plus me at the minute. So once we get up to 6 or 7 people, then we'll be starting, and the latest that we start is probably 25 to. So we've people using the chat pane already. We've got Gavin in Neath Port Talbot Council. Hi to you, Gavin. Please feel free to use the chat pane as much as you like. If you've got any questions, I'll try and answer them or pass them on to Karen. We'll start in a couple of minutes' time. We've got 4 viewers at the minute, which is probably 3 plus me. I'm running the technical side of today, making sure that everything's working and that people are able to interact on social media, etc. Karen will be starting the presentation in a couple of minutes' time. So we've got a couple of people who've just joined us in the last minute or so. I'm going to pass over to Karen Fisher now, and we'll get the presentation, get the webinar going. If your line does drop out, remember you can always click back on the link and you can rewind the video to where you were up to last. It shouldn't drop out. Everything seems to be pretty stable at the minute. So we're going to pass over to Karen now. So I'm going to mute my microphone and let Karen get on with the webinar.
Okay, thanks Richard, and thanks for your help this morning in setting up this webinar. This is actually the third in our series of Friday webinars. Unfortunately, we did have some difficulties last week with our coping with change session, but we do aim to reorganise that shortly. We would be very grateful this morning if you would follow the link that's on the screen at the moment. Mainly because this activity is funded by the Welsh Government via the Wales Union Learning Fund. And obviously, Richard and myself have to evidence that we've produced this activity and that we are actually engaging with learners, albeit in a very different way today. So we would really appreciate your help if you are able to follow the link that's on your screen now and just complete a few details so that we can demonstrate this as evidence to our sponsors. You have heard mostly Richard's voice this morning, and Richard is a project manager at one of the Welsh Government's Wales Union Learning Fund projects called Digi Skills Cymru. And as that title suggests, Richard is concerned with all things digital skills in the workplace. Richard's based in Bangor, and he's actually broadcasting, I believe, this morning from Bethesda, but he actually has an all-Wales remit. Unfortunately, you'll be left with me for the majority of the session. I'm Karen Fisher and I'm Project Manager at Connecting Learners in South West and Central Wales. This is another one of UNISON's lifelong learning projects under the banner of the Wales Union Learning Fund. And I'm supported by two colleagues in the South East and also in North Wales as well. And the aim of all of our projects really is to widen participation in learning, encourage people working in public services to take advantage of personal development opportunities, to allow them to progress in the workplace or to encourage them to be their best selves in the role that they're in at the moment. Those of you who joined us very early in the broadcast will have heard Richard explain that we've set up a hashtag on Twitter for today's session. And you'll see that at the bottom of the screen periodically. And we're running the hashtag of New Year, New Unison. And we would encourage participants today to comment as the webinar progresses. Occasionally, I'll throw out a few questions, so it'd be great if we can get some Twitter responses. And also, as Richard explained earlier, there is a comment pane below the broadcast, below the video pane on YouTube. If you have an account with YouTube, I believe you can comment that way as well. No pressure on your part, but it's great, you know, to get some feedback from you as learners, rather than it being sort of one-way traffic, I guess, and listening to me all the time. So why are we here today? Very short session, I appreciate, and much of what I aim to cover would normally be covered in perhaps a full day workshop or something even a bit longer than that. But what we aim to do is at least stimulate interest and perhaps encourage you to join some of our face-to-face workshops at a later date. But just to get you thinking, I guess, today about our skills and how we apply them and how perhaps we can improve them. So we will discuss assessing our current skills and strengths, and by the same token, identifying areas for self-development. We'll have a chat about employability skills and why these are important. And then we'll consider how we can evidence our skills through a personal development portfolio. We will at least start to think about reflective practice and why that is advantageous. Consider goal setting, and shortly at the end we'll highlight how certain reps within your Unison branch can support you through your development. At the risk of sounding morbid, which kind of contradicts our theme of a new year, a new you, it is realistic to note there is no longer such thing as a job for life. As public service workers, we have suffered unprecedented cuts to services. Services may have been privatised or outsourced. That's the sort of terminology we hear at the moment. Our own jobs may have changed. and many of us are forced to do the same job with fewer resources. And in some instances, we will know of colleagues who have actually faced redundancy. Coupled with the fact that we all have to work longer before we can retire and access our pensions, it's likely at some stage that we will have to change jobs and careers more than once. Now, we're not looking to point fingers or lay blame here. In fact, as a trade union, our industrial arm looks to work in partnership with employers to minimise the impact on UNISON members. And one way we can do this is via our learning projects, like connecting learners and digi-skills, supporting individuals to upskill, take stock of their skills and strengths, and help people through job application processes. We know that applying for a job is a competitive process. So with this in mind, and taking the Greater Nile and Bevins quote into consideration, how can we stand out from the crowd? So today's session is kind of part one of a two-pack, because next week we'll be looking at our personal qualities and values. So please feel free to join us next week to see how they kind of go hand in hand. So we know all employers look for three things. They look for skills. This is the I can, yeah, the ability to do something well, whether that be job skills or qualifications. They also look for qualities. So this is the I am. Our characteristics and traits, usually displayed as behaviours. So for example, somebody who is able to show that they can care for an individual, or somebody perhaps who has strong leadership qualities. And finally, and this is becoming more and more pertinent in public services, people's values, what we believe in. These are the principles and standards of behaviour, our judgment of what is important in life. It's, I guess, the things that get you out of bed in the morning, things that you become passionate about, things that agitate you or perhaps make you angry. You'll often hear the term employability skills, and these can be defined as the transferable skills needed by an individual to make them employable. Along with good technical understanding and subject knowledge, employers often outline a set of skills that they want from an employee. These skills are what they believe will equip the employee to carry out their role to the best of their ability. As I say, transferable skills, they're jobs that might apply in one job and apply perfectly well to another. So for example, communication skills, or being able to show that you can manage your time well. The complexity of these skills will differ according to the role that you're working in. Then we have the job-specific skills, and you'll notice the lady crouching there on the screen. She's representing the zookeepers. So job-specific skills are the abilities that allow a candidate to excel in a particular job. They're usually specific to a certain role. So for example, like the zookeeper there, the skills required for that particular role will be vastly different to those required by somebody perhaps working in the fire service. Then finally, we've got our evidence of learning. When we look at a job advert, we normally notice a list of criteria you need to meet in order to get shortlisted for an interview. These are usually a minimum set of expectations that you have to demonstrate in order to get the job. And inevitably, these usually include qualifications or evidence of prior learning. So for example, a job at the local authority might ask for a minimum of 5 GCSE qualifications. Or somebody might ask for a diploma, perhaps in a job-specific subject. So with this in mind, we would need to be able to produce evidence for these qualifications, and that's normally in the form of a certificate of achievement. And we'll discuss ways of how we can collate this evidence a little bit later. So that's just to summarise, I guess, what I've already said, yeah? A little reminder of what we mean by employability skills. Looking at a survey carried out by the Chartered Management Institution, they put together what they believe is the top 10 employability skills that employers look for. So we're looking at number one, the ability to express your ideas clearly and confidently in speech. Important that we're able to work confidently within a group as part of a team. I think that great saying comes to mind, isn't it? There's no I in team. There's so much emphasis now and encouragement around working together collaboratively. That we will be sort of encouraged more to work as teams, and especially cross sectors as well. When we think of the moves to integrate health and social care, for example. By commercial awareness, we mean what the company is all about, what their mission is, and how that business operates, and who their customers or clients are. I think analysing and investigating speaks for itself, basically gathering information, establishing facts, and being able to solve problems. Self-motivation, the ability to act on initiative, identify opportunities and put forward ideas and solutions. Again, thinking of ways that we can improve public services when you consider the pressures that we're facing at the moment. Which links in nicely to drive, the determination to get things done and make things happen, constantly looking for ways to improve. Written communication, I believe, speaks for itself. And planning and organising, the ability to carry out, or rather prepare plans and carry them out effectively. Flexible working, adapting successfully to changing situations and environments. And finally, being able to manage our time effectively, prioritising tasks and working to deadlines. And as I said earlier, the complexity of these skills will vary according to the sort of job you do. But generally speaking, these are the skills that are common in most jobs. I have just noted a few additional skills that were populated through the survey as well. And interestingly, showing evidence there of lifelong learning. And I'm sure Richard will be particularly interested to see that digital skills also features in the table as well. Now, this might seem a little bit overwhelming, especially if you're in a position where you are actively seeking to move into another role. But it's okay. Employability skills can be learned, and I believe there are steps that we can take to improve that and make us stand out from the crowd. The first step is to carry out a skills inventory or an audit. And this is going to help us identify the things that we're good at and the things that we're less good at. It'll give us a basis of a learning plan. And what you'll see on the screen at the moment are a number of links that I have identified from different sources. And basically, they're electronic questionnaires, for want of a better word, which takes you through, a set of questions, making you consider what you're good at, what you're not so good at. And at the end, that will give you an indicator of areas for improvement. If all else fails, the one at the bottom, you can usually find a wealth of information at Business Balls, which is usually quite a reliable place to look if you're looking at personal development. But for the purposes of today's session, I would like to highlight an excellent resource developed by the TUC Union Learn Facility. These are the Value My Skills cards, which you see the graphic on the right there. They were originally developed following a piece of research carried out by Union Learn about the over 50s workforce. As we mentioned earlier, people are finding themselves in a position where they may have to apply for jobs. We're waiting longer to access our pension, so we're all going to be working well into our late 60s, which is horrific in my view. And in some instances, some people have been fortunate to remain in the same job for a number of years, but are in a position now that they may have to, due to reorganisation and restructure, apply for other jobs elsewhere in the organisation. Worst case scenario, they may find that they're leaving their organisation altogether and applying for external jobs as well. So with this in mind, the Value My Skills cards were developed. The cards, like any other card game, are organised and colour-coded into suits, for want of a better word. And you'll notice on the screen that they've been organised according to coloured headings or skills categories. So you'll notice there are skills around things. So those are very hands-on, practical skills. There are people skills, skills around data, and around ideas as well, which often features things that we've been talking about, the transferable employability skills. So you'll have a number of cards, each colour coordinated for each category. There are an additional 4 competency cards, which, as you can see, range from being very competent to underdeveloped. And how it works is basically, it's a bit like playing solitaire, if you remember. So you will lay down your blue competency cards and then work through each of the coloured skills cards and decide whether you are very competent in this particular area or you feel that you need to develop further. So what you're doing is building a picture of your skills and your strengths, but also highlighting areas for development. In addition as well, you'll notice, for example, there were the practical skills cards. So that would include things like being able to use a power tool. Now, me personally, that isn't an area for me where I would like to develop in the future. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't care if I never ever use a power tool. So with that in mind, I can also reject those as skills for development. Does that make sense? And then focus on the areas that I do need to concentrate on more. So as I say, what it's doing is building up a picture of what we are really good at. So those are the things that we will celebrate if we're applying for a job or preparing a CV. And then the adequate and underdeveloped skills, we will decide whether we want to enhance those further. We do have a stock of these cards available, and I have noted my email address at the bottom, and there are the routes that we can access them as well. But by all means, do get in touch, and I'd be more than happy to get a supply of these out to your workplace so that you can use them for yourself or use them with colleagues. Particularly helpful if you have responsibility for staff supervision and appraisal as well. There are numerous uses for this tool, and I'd be more than pleased to have a chat with you further about that. So we've identified things that we're good at, things that we're not so good at. In terms of having opportunities then for further developing our employability skills, there are a number of ways we can do it. Yes, the traditional way would be to go and attend a course or a workshop, whether it be in the workplace or in the local college or community. But also being mindful of the roles that we play outside of work. So for example, you may have responsibility for managing a sports team. You might have been fundraising for a local cause, for example. So again, going back to that word transferable, there are skills that we've acquired there that may not be formally recognised in the workplace, but we can evidence if we were going to apply for a job. And speaking of which, how are we going to collect this as evidence? One helpful way is by developing a personal development portfolio, which is basically an ongoing collection of notes and evidence of your work or practice. And it can be collected in a number of different formats. It can be collected perhaps in a notebook, quite informally, or as a folder, or you can have an electronic record. And you can discuss your preferred method with your line manager as well. You may find, depending on where you're working, for example, in the NHS, it's quite sort of common practice to have a personal development portfolio. I am actually curious, the hashtag's up there as a reminder. Does anybody currently maintain a personal development portfolio? And if so, do you see any benefit to it, really? While Richard is kind of monitoring any comments that come through there, I'll just remind us that a personal development portfolio offers a basic structure for collecting information and evidence of qualifications. And if you do choose to use it, it's your portfolio. It's your property, and you can use it in a way that you feel is best for you. It is hoped you will find it useful in your career. Use it at key points during the year, take it from post to post, and keep it up to date at regular intervals by including more recent information and discarding things that are no longer relevant. I'm going to stop there for a moment. Out of curiosity, Richard, have we had any feedback on that so far?
Not so far.
Okay.
We've had a few people using the chat pane and Twitter, but not answering that question as yet. But may well be that people are typing comments in as we speak. And I'm just frantically reloading pages and stuff.
Would it be useful to just review any comments that have been made so far?
Yeah, well, Mark from Newport Talbot was asking about what kinds of skills that Wales Union Learning Fund can provide to council staff who are facing interviews or selling themselves. So I point them towards the fact that we do digital skills, communication, literacy, numeracy, and confidence building. Those are kind of the core of what all of our Wolf projects offer. I also posted up on Twitter a picture of my Value My Skills cards when I dealt them out. A really good and suggested a really good way, if you're going to use them, a really good way to record it is to actually lay them out on a flat surface and take a picture of them, and then you've got a permanent record of your skills audit, and there's no need to write things out or anything like that. You've got that record. I did this a couple of years ago when I first saw the cards. I've just scrolled through my pictures and found my very competent group, and I posted them up on the DigiSkills Cymru Twitter feed under the hashtag New Year, New Unison, and Value My Skills. So just looking now. I haven't got any comments coming through right at this minute. I'll reload the video page and maybe there'll be something there. But please keep chatting away if you want, or not. You just sit back and then go ahead with the presentation. I'm going to mute my microphone again now, so that Karen can continue on.
No problem. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, just to continue then with the theme of the personal development portfolio or folder. The types of things that we would be collecting, the types of evidence, so things like qualifications and training, as it says on the slide there. Any evidence of work experience, whether it be paid or voluntary. Thinking of my own experience, for example, being involved with a local church, even if it's sort of being a meter and greeter on a Sunday morning before a service, it's working with people. Do you know what I mean? Thinking of our own family, where our boys are involved in managing a sports club, so lots of responsibilities to be recorded there. Also, other skills and awards achieved, I think that's quite important too. Things like awards like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, for example, quite a prestigious award which evidences lots of different skills and competencies like working together and what have you. And other information like things that you're interested in and being very aware of your key strengths and limitations as well. So as a portfolio, it allows us to make a detailed audit then of our experiences and achievements. And it'll also form a good basis for helping us to decide on our future career directions. It provides an excellent basis for a CV And especially when we're applying for a job, you'll know that job application forms will vary according to organisation, where sometimes you have to perhaps complete it in a hard copy paper-based format, down to completing an application online. And I find it's quite an onerous process, really, because you have to sort of list all of your qualifications, you know, starting from school, and then you have to sort of give details of all your work experience. And by having it put together in a portfolio, I find that the information is already at hand, and it kind of makes light then of that process of completing the application form. So that just consolidates what we've just been talking about there. I'll not sort of repeat, other than to say perhaps witness statements. That's very useful. For example, if you have done some voluntary work, or if you've produced an innovative piece of work in the workplace, having a witness statement from your line manager, or from, as I say, somebody within the community is very useful. It's almost like a mini reference, if you like. It mentioned as well reflective practice. And in its simplest form, I suppose it's thinking about or reflecting on what you do. Particularly now in public services, Richard and I were talking earlier actually about social care workforce, about healthcare support workers in the health service, and also people working in school support, the classroom assistants and what have you, where all these groups of staff are being encouraged now to indulge, if you like, in reflective practice. Closely linked to the concept of learning from our experiences, in that we think about what we did, what happened, and then having reflected on that, we decide from that what we would do differently next time. And by the same token, consider what went well and you know, what we would continue to do. It increases self-awareness. It helps us develop a better understanding of others. It encourages our creative skills and also helps us to take active engagement in the work processes. And it also supports recognition of prior learning. Now that again is something that is emerging within public services, where we have, for example, the healthcare support worker framework that's imminent. In social care, we have the QCF, vocational competencies. And you know, that is quite a complex process, where people with perhaps a wealth of experience, having worked in those areas for a long time, are now being asked to evidence their competency in a certain area. So what the recognition of prior learning does is seeks to sort of, I don't know, place value, I guess, on previous qualifications that you've attained, or the work experience that you can produce, and almost transfer that then, so you don't have to duplicate any learning in the future. So keep that in mind. It is something that is emerging, and you will hear a lot of in the future. So, okay, reflective practice is a skill like any other skill, but you know, there are steps that we can take to improve. And one of our friends of our lifelong learning projects, who also happens to be a social work academic, Dr. Neil Thompson, he recommends 6 steps in terms of reflective practice. And he suggests that we read, first of all, around the topics that we are learning about or want to learn about and develop. To ask others about the way they do things and why. To watch and observe what's going on around you. To pay attention to our feelings and our emotions, what prompts them, and how we deal with negative feelings and emotions. He encourages talking, sharing our views and experience with other people in the organisation. And you can see the the fella at the bottom right there. Thinking, so encouraging us to value time spent thinking about our work. So it's more than just, you know, just sort of historically thinking back. There are numerous models and theories that we can explore as an alternative just to help us with reflective practice. And one I quite like is the one on the screen now, which was developed by Graham Gibbs. And he starts on the top of the slide there, towards the right, and the question which starts the process is, what happened? Give us a description. And then following on from that, a series of questions to think about that situation that we've encountered. It is quite similar. I appreciate to what Dr. Thompson recommended, but I do think that these questions are really helpful in, as I say, you know, reflecting on what's happened and what we can do differently in the future, what we've learned from that experience. If that's a little bit too detailed for you, there is an alternative, again, widely used in learning development. It's the Kolb cycle of experiential learning. It is quite similar to the Gibb model, a few less questions, but as Kolb suggests, you know, we think about what happened, what was my experience of it, why did it happen, and is there anything there that can deepen my understanding, and what will I do or not do if it ever happens again. So we've got an appreciation, having done a skills audit or carried out the value my skills exercise. So we know now what we're good at, what we're not so good at. We've considered the merits of collecting that evidence together as a portfolio, and we've touched very, very briefly on reflective practice, which again is a workshop in its own right. So we're forming now a basis of a personal development plan. So it is at this stage useful to ask, how do I learn best? We all have varied experience of our school years, some positive, some negative. If I think of my own experience of school, I absolutely loathed maths with a passion. I didn't have a very good relationship with my maths teacher, and as such kind of switched off, you know, to the subject. A good place to start is by asking, what was the best learning experience I ever had? Why was it so good? And in comparison, considering the worst experience. You will also need to consider, how much do I need to know? Will it be enough just to have a basic overview? So, you know, you may find yourself after today's session saying, right, I really need to know a bit more about this. So, you know, what other workshops or resources are in place to help me find out a little bit more? Can I learn this by reading an article or by reading a book? Or, you know, would it be better if I attended a more lengthy course? Now, not everybody likes the sort of traditional chalk and talk learning experience. Some do, however. Some actually like the company and support of other students. They don't mind the commitment of homework. Whereas others are happy to learn alone, and this might take the form of reading a book, an article, or like today, like you online, joining a webinar, something a little bit different. Some people prefer a coaching or mentoring approach to learning. So a mentor may be an experienced member of staff, and this is somebody you would enter into an informal relationship with and have the opportunity to shadow or observe them at work. So, you know, what are you doing and what can I learn from you? A mentor would generally show you how to. On the other hand, a coach does not tell you what to do or show you how. Coaches tend to have an appropriate qualification for this purpose, and rather than telling you how to do something, a coach will facilitate discussions. So they will throw at you lots and lots of questions and help you to arrive at your own conclusions. The important thing to remember, though, is that we are all different. There's so much more we could talk about in terms of learning preferences. So, you know, we'll keep that for another time, maybe. So we've decided perhaps on how we would like to learn. We've got an idea of our areas for improvement. We've got the basis of a learning plan. The next step, in order for our learning venture to be successful, and I would say again, good practice, is to consider about setting some goals. Setting goals is often debated. Is it useful or not? But for me, not setting a goal is a bit like setting out on a long journey to a new and unfamiliar place without me first working out a route map. How am I going to get there? Okay, so if we're going to continue with that analogy, the route might vary, and depending on our personalities and motivation, some of us will take the direct route from A to B, the less route possible, whereas others, like myself, often take a more scenic route with stops and diversions along the way. But it is important, though, that we do have a plan, at least an idea of where we're going, how we're going to get there. So a good goal is a planned goal, a goal with specific details in terms of how you're going to go about achieving it. Now, I'm sure this is not going to come as a surprise to you. I'm sure people working in public services will be more than familiar with the acronym SMART. This is a sort of template, if you like, in helping you when you start thinking about your goals, how to go about it. It'll ask you, is the goal specific? Is it measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound? You will notice there are a few extra words along each side just to sort of, encourage greater debate. So here's an example. I'm going to learn how to troubleshoot IT issues for my company. Okay, it seems quite good, when you look at it in the first instance. But if you compare it to the goal on the right-hand side, and this person has actually used the SMART template as a means to develop that goal, I think it makes much greater sense. So it tells us, that he has considered the time-bound element. So by December the 15th, I will be able to troubleshoot Office software, including Microsoft Word and Excel. So he's been very specific about what he wants to do. He's actually considered an element there, of measuring. So he's going to do this with a less than 3% error rate. Yeah. So it gives him something to review and reflect on at a later date. So if he hasn't achieved the goal, there may be clues within that objective as to why. Again, we've literally scratched the surface this morning. It is a workshop in itself. So to come back to Mark's original query earlier, I will sort of revise some of this in how we can provide additional support to his members in the local authority. Which leads me on quite nicely as to why UNISON is actually bothering this morning to broadcast this webinar. UNISON is one of the UK's largest public service unions with 1.3 members across the country. I emphasise public services and not public sector, and that's largely down to how services are now delivered. We mentioned at the beginning, that lots of services now are managed perhaps by what they call arm's length organisations or third sector organisations, or services have been transferred away from the statutory bodies like local authorities and health boards. So the landscape, if you like, the profile of public services is much different. All of our work is informed by what our members want. We are a democratic, member-led organisation striving to improve the work life of our members and the services they ultimately provide to the public. And learning is at the heart of our agenda, described by our General Secretary, Dave Prentice, as the jewel in our crown, and working on a local level through our projects in Wales, through our national team at Learning and Organising Services, and more importantly, from learning specialists, our workplace foot soldiers, if you like, through lively networks of union learning representatives. So these are just a few of the resources and areas of support that we can provide. There is a dedicated learning platform called Learning for You, and the link is on your screen there. And as I say, you know, there are a wealth of resources, short courses, a few online experiences that have been developed and prepared by our colleagues at our national office. Local funding through the Wales Union Learning Fund. So those are the projects managed by myself, by Richard, and my colleagues in South East and North Wales. And just explaining a little bit more about our union learning representatives. They are, as is, you know, a special kind of union rep, really. You know, unlike the traditional union rep, the people that we sort of immediately go to when we get into trouble, perhaps when we're in workplace. Union learning reps are enthusiasts and advocates for lifelong learning. So they, with a special interest in learning themselves, will advise people in the workplace about the wealth of courses that are available through your employer, through our union, and also through the wider learning community, so signposting you to the colleges and to the community provision as well. I am aware, I think the people who are actually logged on this morning and viewing, a few people from Neath Talbot Council. We're very pleased actually to have a lively network of union learning reps there. We currently have 9 UNISON reps operating within the authority. And I'm sure Debbie, who heads up the team, would always welcome some additional help as well. So just to finish really, and to come back to Mark's online query earlier, there are a full range of CPD workshops available through both the Connected Learners projects and through Richard's DigiSkills project. And the types of workshops that will help you if you are in a position where you feel you want to progress in the workplace, or if you are in that position, as Mark suggested, you know, facing redundancy or moving into other roles. Things like CV writing, job applications, we can help with that. Lots around confidence building, which funny enough we did at the authority yesterday. Communication skills, presentation skills. Basically, have a chat with us. Details on the bottom there, and we can also signpost you to Richard as well, who can help with the digital literacy skills too. Give us a call, we'll have a chat about it, and if we can help, we'd be more than pleased to do so. So before I hand back to Richard, because he may have a little bit more feedback for us before we sum up, you have received a short overview on the subject of personal development. And we will be continuing the conversation next week, because we're going to be looking at creating our personal brand or reputation. So we'll be focusing on our behaviours and attitudes and thinking about how others see us. And particularly interesting as well, Richard's going to be contributing a lot more. We'll hear a lot more of Richard next week, because we'll be looking at things like our social media footprint. So for example, if somebody was to Google us today, what sort of things would emerge that could affect our reputation? So I'm going to hand you back to Richard now, who's going to provide any summing up and any feedback that we might have received in the meantime. Just because the webinar is due to end, please continue to comment on Twitter, by all means using the hashtag that's on the bottom of the screen now.
Hi Karen, hi everyone.
All right, Rich.
Thank you, Karen, very much for your presentation this afternoon. I found it really interesting. We've had a number of comments on the chat pane and on Twitter. On the chat pane, Jane in MPT Council also contributed that Johari's window is a good method of assessing your own skills and abilities, and maybe gaps in your skills that was an interesting resource. I've shared. Business Balls has a page dedicated to that methodology, so I've shared that on Twitter and on the chat pane as well. So thanks, Jane, for sharing that. Yeah, just to reiterate what Karen said as well, there are learning opportunities available through UNISON's dedicated online site, and again I've shared that link on the chat pane and on Twitter, but also through the Wolf projects that operate across all regions of Wales, the Connecting Learners across three regions, and my project for the next 2 months, we're around able to do digital literacy themed workshops in public service workplaces. We've got combating cyber violence and online bullying 1-day workshop, which is an accredited workshop. We've also got 1-day unaccredited workshops available for social care and for school support staff, alongside Adult Learning Wales. So if your workplaces would like those, get in touch with me directly through Twitter or through Karen. We'd have to get them booked in pretty sharpish, because after the end of March, I'm no longer contracted to do this. So yeah, we need to get those in right away. Hopefully, though, those things will be able to be continued on through the Connecting Learners project for the next year or more.
Yes, I hope so.
Other than that, we've had a good few people watching us, I think. We're up to nearly double figures at one point. If you are just joining us now, if you've joined halfway through, you can rewind the video and watch us from the beginning and get the same experience. Please continue to use the hashtag and the chat pin on YouTube as well. If you want to pass on the link that was in the email, if you want to pass that on to any of your colleagues, please do, and they'll be able to then come into this video and to watch it at their leisure. I'd just ask that if everyone could please fill in the form, which has come up a few times, which is bit.ly/capital W, capital U, capital L, capital F, and then lowercase form, and then 200117. That would really help us, because that helps us to know who we've had and to report it accurately to the Welsh Government. And the same. That
includes Fisher as well, mind, Rich?
Sorry?
I said that includes Fisher as well. He's not exempt from completing a form.
No, but some people I know, like Mark, like Jane, have completed that form in the past. There is a field on that form that says, if you have completed this form have you completed this form in the past, please do tick that accurately, because we need to know both how many learners we've had and how many people are unique and new to the projects as well. So even if you have filled in the form before, please fill it in and tick that box accurately. It helps us, and it helps the Welsh Government to understand how the money that they've invested in these projects is used. And that goes for if you're watching this video at a later date as well. That form is still there. It doesn't matter if you're watching this later on in 2017. We will still appreciate that information from us.
It's helpful to know, actually.
Yeah. So so unless there's anything else we haven't got anything else on the chat pane. On Twitter, I'm just reloading the page now. We have no further comments on Twitter at this stage, so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you again, Karen, for a really interesting webinar. Next week is I will be contributing more to the session on developing your personal brand. Well, we will look a little bit more in detail at your social media and your online presence, and how to build that, and how to make sure you're sharing what you want to share with people on the internet. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your sunny Friday, Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you online again at 12:30 next week.
Thanks, Richard. Diolch yn fawr.
Croeso.